Is bird flu going to be the next pandemic that wreaks havoc on daily life? Hello, everyone. I'm not Gabby B, and let's dive into it. Now, the question of whether or not we should be worried about bird flu is not new. It has been asked in multiple news articles since late 2024. But still, since the pandemic in 2020, the outbreak of any new illness has the ability to make people incredibly nervous, with good reason. I don't know about you, but working in a lab testing for COVID in 2020 was like number one on a list of top 10 worst jobs. And that's me speaking from experience. But all that aside, the widespread death, fear, and sickness that ran rampant impacted pretty much everyone on Earth. From not being able to leave your house, to having to wear masks 24/7, to not being able to be with loved ones during critical times, to trying to wade through constantly being blasted with new misinformation, information, outdated information. It was an all around terrible time. I think we can all agree. So I'm sure with all of the recent talk of bird flu and with the announcement on Monday, January 6th of 2025 that the first person in the US has passed away from the H5N1 bird flu, many people have been getting nervous. So what exactly is bird flu and how much of a risk is it? Does it have the potential to create another pandemic? And what can we do to stay safe? In today's video, I'll do my best to answer all of these questions. So, first up, what exactly is bird flu? Well, bird flu is the common name of avian influenza. It's a viral infection that affects wild birds, cows, cats, poultry, and of course, it can be spread from those animals to human. The people most at risk are those that work with poultry, with wild birds, and dairy cows. However, while we know that humans can get infected by animals, the spread from human to human is extremely rare, according to the Cleveland Clinic and the CDC. So, what's important to note is that there are many different types of bird flu, and they're actually sorted into subtypes based on two proteins on the surface of the virus. So, the first of these proteins is hemagglutinin, which, HA or the H part of H5N1, and there are 16 of these H subtypes ranging from H1 to H16. The second protein is neuraminidase, or Na, and there are 9 of these subtypes ranging from N1 to N9. So, due to there being so many different possible subtypes, there are also so many different combinations of the hemagglutinin and neuraminidase proteins that are possible. For example, we have H5N1, which is the subtype that we're discussing today, as well as H5N2, H7N2, and a host of others. You get the idea. So, in addition to this, the bird flu viruses are also sorted based on whether they're able to infect chickens, which is important because highly pathogenic avian influenza or HPAI viruses are able to infect and kill large amounts of poultry, and they can also affect wild birds. While low pathogenic avian influenza or LPAI can infect poultry, but they may not kill that many of those that get infected. And also at the same time, they're not necessarily affecting wild bird populations very much. Interestingly enough, back on March 25th, 2024, the highly pathogenic avian influenza strain H5N1 was found in dairy cows in a multi-state outbreak. And according to the CDC, this was the first time bird flu virus was found in cows in the US. But since 2022, USDA APHIS has reported bird flu virus in more than 200 mammals. And I have that information linked in the description. It's really neat info if you're into that. Like I can absolutely put the APHIS in there. It shows you the types of mammals infected, and there's like a whole map that shows you where they were infected. It's it's pretty cool. I thought it was cool, okay? Don't judge me. We're here to learn. And also just remember, if you guys ever want any of my sources or my sources list, it's really when you link them in the description of YouTube, sometimes the links get taken down and then it's like a whole thing with YouTube emailing you. But if you want any information, just email me and I'll email you my references. Okay. So, shortly after detection in cows on April 1st, 2024, the CDC confirmed one H5N1 infection in a person that was exposed to dairy cows in Texas, and those cows may have been infected. But then, according to the CDC, that may have been the first instance of mammal to human spread of the H5N1 virus. Then in May, more cases of bird flu popped up in people that were also exposed to dairy cows that were infected. So a lot happened with dairy cows last year, okay? So as of the day that I'm writing this, January 7th, 2025, the CDC's data show that there are currently 16 states with outbreaks in dairy cows. And I know what you're all thinking, Gabby. It's called bird flu. Why are we talking about cows? I get it. I'm getting to that. Just be patient, please. So the thing is, mammals can be infected with H5N1 if they eat infected birds or poultry, or they're exposed to contaminated soil, water, or shared equipment. So with cows, it could be like milking machinery, or transportation equipment, or even vet equipment. However, according to the CDC, the spread of H5N1 from mammal to mammal is rare, but with the spread amongst herds, we know that bovine to bovine spread does occur. So, yeah, we're learning, okay? There's a lot. The good news, though, is that while birds have had high morbidity rates, cows have a less than 2% mortality rate, with one of the biggest issues being the spread of the virus from cows to poultry facilities that may share equipment or be nearby. Okay, so how do we protect ourselves from animals that are infected by H5N1? So the first step is probably recognizing infected animals. According to the American Veterinary Medical Association, or AVMA, when it comes to cows, they give signs of low appetite, reduced milk production, and abnormal milk appearance. In birds, we see signs of, well, death. I mean, it's extremely rare for poultry to survive H5N1, and the survival of wild birds highly depends on the species, as some species are more susceptible while others are more resilient. So, symptoms to look for in birds are low energy and appetite, swelling of body parts, as well as discoloration, reduced egg production, respiratory symptoms like coughing and sneezing, and also diarrhea. And just when you think things cannot get any worse, well, man's best frenemy, the cat, can also become infected and severely ill from H5N1. So, when cats ingest unpasteurized milk from infected cows, or if they eat a sick or dead bird, they risk contracting the illness. And since the cattle outbreak began, several barn cats have also become sick. Symptoms to look for in cats and dogs are fever, lethargy, low appetite, red eyes, discharge from nose and eyes, difficulty breathing, and seizures. I mean, TLDR, if you see a sick animal, run. Just kidding. Just kidding, okay? But exactly how much of a risk is bird flu to humans? And does it have the ability to create another pandemic? So, since one person has died, it's obviously something that would make us all nervous, especially with being bombarded by news articles 24/7. I don't know if you guys get this, but every single time anything health wise happens, I get like 50 emails from every news site known to man. I mean, genuinely, everyone was like, oh my gosh, bird flu, bird flu. And I was like, but then I looked into it. I think they want the clicks, obviously. So just read the articles. It helps. It helps. If you have anxiety like me, just read the whole article. It helps. So, first thing we should address though is mortality. According to CNN, the person that passed away in Louisiana was over the age of 65 and had underlying health conditions. And they didn't contract it from another person, but they actually fell ill after being exposed to a backyard flock of birds and also to wild birds. According to Dr. Richard Webby, the man who directs okay, guys, this is going to be a long name. He directs the World Health Collaborating Center for Studies on the Ecology of Influenza in Animals and Birds. And this virus has been studied for 25 years, and this current form is the nastiest form of the virus that they have seen, according to him. So the thing is, as of right now, H5N1 primarily infects animals. According to the World Health Organization, since 2003, roughly 900 human infections have been reported, and more than half of those were fatal. But if these numbers were correct, that would mean the virus would have a 50% fatality rate. Here's the thing. Do not panic yet. You have to let me finish. So the experts who study this virus, they don't actually think that it kills 50% of the people that it infects because, well, one, that would be wild. And two, hear me out. When you get sick and you don't get incredibly ill, do you run to the doctor immediately to get a test for bird flu? Probably not. You just go, it's a cold, and you keep on trucking. I mean, you know. So that's why experts believe that the fatality rate isn't an accurate representation. Severe cases of H5N1 are more likely to be caught and reported, and mild illnesses, aka the ones that people get and don't even really register, aren't being factored into the 50% fatality figure. According to CNN, even if the actual fatality rate was 10 times lower, that would still make it 5%, which would be a really high fatality rate. Keep in mind the fatality rate of the original COVID strain was 2.6%. But still, don't panic, there is more. A study in the New England Journal of Medicine that was carried out by scientists at the CDC, which is an article that I can email to anyone who is interested enough to read it, found that the first 46 human cases of H5N1 in the US last year were all mild. All except one happened after exposure to infected farm animals. So they weren't like spreading human to human, they were mild cases and they were coming from infected animals. That is important here. So unless you're working around poultry and cattle, you're probably going to be fine. Now, if you do have poultry in your backyard or as pets, then of course, be observant, be vigilant, take precautions, and I'll be getting into what precautions you should take later on. Now, interesting thing to note though is that the person in Louisiana that unfortunately passed away was infected with the D1.1 clade of the bird flu virus. And guys, a clade is basically just a grouping that includes a common ancestor and all the descendants living or extinct of that ancestor. So like they're grouped. They're related. Okay, so the important thing though is that this strain is circulating in wild birds and poultry, and it's different from the one that's circulating in dairy cattle. So the CNN article states that they aren't sure whether the deep 1.1 clade can lead to more severe diseases in humans, as this strain had also caused severe illness in a 13-year-old girl who, luckily she recovered after intensive care. But the same strain has been found in poultry farm workers in Washington, and those workers had relatively mild cases. So, it's a learn as we go type of situation, trying to find connections, but also you can't be 100% sure at this point. So, the thing that should make us a little worried though is that the CDC put out a report that showed that upon genetic analysis of the sample from the Louisiana patient, it was found that the virus did mutate in order to more easily infect the upper respiratory system in humans. And this change could lead to increased person to person spread. We know that this mutation more than likely occurred in the infected person as well because this change was not observed in the DNA analysis of the virus from the infected birds. So the birds that infected that person, they did not have that change in their virus. So when the person got infected, while it was, doing its thing, it made a change to be more transmissible or more easily infect other humans from a human. And you guys know, as we all saw with COVID and the multiple variants, change can happen rapidly during the course of an infection. Luckily, though, no one was infected in human to human contact from that patient. So that's the good news. The important thing to do here is to ensure that the spread is contained so that person to person transmission can be prevented. As of right now, the CDC still says that the risk that H5N1 poses to the general public is low, and no person to person transmission has at this time been identified. And yes, while there are active outbreaks amongst birds and cows, there are no significant changes that increase the risk to humans at this time. However, if you are exposed or you think you may have been exposed to infected birds, the symptoms you need to look out for are fever, sore throat, cough, stuffy or runny nose, nausea, vomiting, fatigue, muscle aches, diarrhea, shortness of breath, and pink eye. Now, guys, please, if you're sick with like the regular flu or a bug right now, and you haven't been around birds or bovines, don't self-diagnose. As someone who does it all the time, we have to be realistic here. You probably got the flu over Christmas since, let's be real, when was the last time any of us really went outside? But if you were frolicking with a flock of geese or cosplaying Little House on the Prairie with a cow as a prop, then maybe be a little worried, okay? So who is the most at risk and how can they protect themselves? Well, as I said earlier, people who work with affected animals or animals that can be affected are the most at risk. In addition, I know we all dream of homesteading, or at least I do, but if you keep backyard chickens or other types of birds, you need to take extra precautions to protect yourself and your birds. Limit access to birds and keep them away from wild bird populations if possible. Don't interact with other bird populations as that increases the risk of bringing disease home. Don't share yard tools and make sure you can recognize signs of illness amongst your flock. If you suspect a bird in your flock is sick, don't touch it and avoid contact with their feces, water sources, or any other areas that might be infected. And, disinfect those areas. There's articles online that tell you exactly what to do, what to use, how to go about it. Also, wear PPE such as disposable gloves and eye protection. don't come into contact with things that can get you sick. I think that's like, it goes without saying, but I'm going to sing it. In addition, follow disinfecting guidelines to make sure the spread from the affected area is decreased. Now, if you don't own birds or cows, just don't go around birds or cows. I feel like you guys are going to be like, duh. I'm just saying, if you see sick or dead birds, please make sure to report them to the USDA. That toll-free number can be found online. But to sum this all up, is the disease deadly? Yes. Is it the next big pandemic? At this point, from what we just discussed, probably not. Or at the very least, not right now. Just don't be stupid. Don't chase geese. They're already angry enough as it is. Leave them alone. Leave them alone. And stay safe. But don't panic over all of the... I feel like they're fear-mongering. Like, yes, we should obviously be a little concerned, but don't go hugging birds or cows. Most of us are not interacting with those animals. You know? I'm just saying. But yeah, thank you all for listening. Let me know what you want to see next. I have a really interesting episode about the band Mayhem coming up. And if you know of any weird cults, let me know. But until next time, bye everyone.